Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the Millennium Pod, a Star Wars podcast by me, Ari, at ari.in.space on TikTok and at the Millennium Pod, all one word, on Instagram. I cannot believe I'm on episode 11 already. That means I've been doing this for 11, 12 weeks now, which is crazy. When I first started, I told myself I had to do 8 weeks, just to get a feel for it. But as of now, I have no intention of stopping. So I'm really excited about that. And I just want to take this moment really quick to just thank everybody who's here listening, whether it's your first time or if you've been listening for a few weeks now or even since the beginning. Thank you so much. I really thought it was going to be my dad and maybe one other person listening to this every week, but I've been overwhelmed that people actually want to listen to me talk about Star Wars, which is just incredible. This week, I'm very excited. It's going to be a shorter episode. It's just me this week, so it's going to be shorter because I can only talk so long to myself before I start to feel like a crazy person. But when I was trying to figure out what I wanted this episode to be about, it was around the time, so Mark Hamill just joined TikTok, right? I guess not everybody, if you're not on TikTok, you don't know that, but Mark Hamill just joined TikTok, which is a really big thing in the Star Wars community. Super exciting because, of course, he's an icon. And so when I was thinking about what I wanted to do this episode on, it was around the time when he joined, about sometime last week, right? And him joining really got me thinking about, why I was so excited he was there, why everyone else was so excited he was there. And I mean, it really comes down to the fact that he's played and he really is and embodies this fantastic character in Star Wars, who for me is one of my absolute favorites. I absolutely love Luke. And so just him being on TikTok kind of made me start to think about why I do love Luke so much. And so that's really what this episode is going to be about. It's going to be very subjective. It's my opinion, 100%. I'm not really trying to convince anybody on this. On my previous episodes, especially my Phantom Menace episode or some of my sequel ones, I'm trying to convince you of something. But in this one, I don't really want to do that. I mean, if I do convince you of something, that's fantastic. But that's not my intention. My intention really is to just kind of dive into why I really appreciate this character so much and why I appreciate him so much from my perspective. So as of right now, as of me recording this on a Tuesday night, I don't have a title for it yet. I don't want it to just be Luke Skywalker. I do want to come up with a better title, but if you are listening to this and the title was Luke Skywalker, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. But anyway, without further ado, let's just get into it. This episode, why I like Luke, why he's one of my favorite characters. I would say that Luke is probably in my top 3. I don't know. Up there with him is Qui-Gon and Rey. I don't know what order they go in. But anyway, it doesn't matter because I love them all. And Luke is one of them. But I do kind of want to go through, all of his appearances and kind of what each appearance kind of means to me and why I appreciate it, because as we see Luke throughout the original trilogy, he's growing as a character. Of course, he has a good character arc, and then we see him again in the sequel trilogy, and he's a bit of a different character at that point. And then we get to see him again in the Mandalorian season 2, and he's different again. And each of those representations, they mean something different to me, and so I kind of want to go through that and just talk about that. So enough rambling off the start. Let's just get into it here. So first things first, when we see Luke, A New Hope is my favorite movie most of the time. Unless I'm feeling emo, then it's Rogue One. But I love A New Hope. It's such a classic story, and it's I think it's the only Star Wars movie that you can really watch without knowing anything about Star Wars, which of course makes sense because it's the first one in the saga. But you could also leave A New Hope and never watch anything again Star Wars related and feel satisfied, and I don't really get that vibe with any of the other movies. You either need prior knowledge or you need more knowledge after, or both with every other Star Wars movie, but not with A New Hope. And at the center of this truly iconic film is, of course, Luke. And I mean, this is such a classic story, right? It's the hero's journey, perfect. You can't go wrong when you use this formula for a story. Person doesn't know they have some kind of power or some kind of destiny to fulfill. And then an old man shows up and tells them they have some kind of power, some kind of destiny to fulfill. And then they reluctantly go along and then ultimately end up becoming the hero. Like, it's a classic story, and I'm a sucker for it. I love it. I will never not want to consume any media that has that trope. But specifically, I really like Luke's character within this very distinctive story type. Because, I mean, we see this story type in, things like Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, for two, like, really big examples there. But for me, at least, in my experience, nobody's favorite character is Harry Potter or Frodo. Like, people don't dislike them, but I have never met somebody whose favorite character is either of those two. And there's nothing wrong with those characters. They're interesting characters, but just nobody seems to resonate with them super strongly enough to say, yep, that's my favorite character, right? But with A New Hope and with Luke, a lot of people's favorite character is Luke. And I think it's because Luke has kind of a more unique way of going about it. I mean, he's really like, he's like each and every one of us. I mean, in the case of like something like Harry Potter, obviously Harry is the chosen one, and that already puts him, kind of removed from the audience, because, I mean, realistically, none of us are like the chosen one in this prophecy. But whereas like Luke is literally, he's just a random farm kid, and I don't know what it is that makes Luke more, favorable than some of those other characters. I mean, I could be totally wrong. People listening might be like, Harry's my favorite character, in which case, I'm so sorry if I haven't met you, so I didn't know that. I think it might also be because Luke's portrayal of, the hero in the hero's journey story type is a lot less like solemn, and he's a lot more willing to go with what is happening in the moment, if that makes sense. And he seems to also kind of be driven more so by the people around him than necessarily the greater cause, right? I mean, in something like, again, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, both Harry and Frodo are both trying to defeat some great evil. And Luke is doing that, but later on. I feel like in A New Hope, he's driven by trying to help others. And I think that's more relatable almost, because it's more attainable, like most people can't relate to going from, I know nothing about this other side of me, to I have to take down this evil thing, as is the case in those other stories I mentioned. But in Star Wars, in A New Hope, Luke does, yes, eventually his goal is to take down the Empire, to take down Vader. But in the first movie, it's very much just little steps at a time in order to take down, and it's almost like he doesn't see the bigger picture, which to me I feel like is more relatable for people, or at least for me, because it's less overwhelming, because it's like, okay, I'm gonna go rescue the princess, okay, I'm going to fight off these TIE fighters, okay, now we're gonna go blow up the Death Star, right? Never is it's like, it's just what comes, he goes with what comes, and I find that super relatable anyway, like the smaller chunks, so it's not overwhelming, and maybe that's why he's just more unique. I don't know. But I appreciate it. And the other thing too about A New Hope is I grew up on a farm, so I could be Luke, I grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere, and he grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere. And so I think that's another reason why I just so strongly relate to that, that desire to just get away. I think another reason too, that Luke seems to be more of a favorite character for people than some of these other characters that are part of the hero's journey is that his arc, he changes very much throughout. And you can totally say the other characters do too, 100%. I'm not saying they don't. But Luke's is very distinctive, right? I mean, in A New Hope, he's got this, farm boy innocence, and he's just trying to do the next right thing, right? Everything that comes to him, he's just trying to help out. And then we get to Empire, and everything becomes a bit darker, and he's faced with more of these challenges, and we really see kind of his resolve start to crack. And I think it was very well done. It's very interesting. And then we get to Return of the Jedi, and he's had his innocent journey in A New Hope, and then he's realized, oh shoot, we're up against something really strong. I don't know if I can do this. I'm being tempted by the dark side. And then we get to Return of the Jedi, and he's very clearly focused on what he needs to do, like what he needs to destroy. And I really like that. I like how in each movie he's a different person, yet the same person. it's a very good arc from start to finish in across the 3 movies. Like, I think it's really incredible. I really think that Luke's journey throughout the original trilogy is just so relatable for so many people, because of the way that it's not initially right off the bat, oh, you have to defeat this dark thing. Like, it gradually builds up to that, and I think that allows people to connect more, because when we see, someone like Frodo, for example, being told he has to go face the evil in Mordor and get rid of this ring right from the beginning, as an audience, or at least for me, I can't connect with that character because that's too much to imagine, like, that weight, right? But again, with Luke, because him discovering his destiny is kind of in smaller chunks and it gradually builds up, I find it more relatable because, yeah, if I was in the same situation as him, yeah, I probably would go along and I would rescue some royalty, and then, oh, well, now we're building up, and now we're going to blow up this big weapon, okay, oh, and now we're building up some more, now we're going to actually face off against the evil lord, who also happens to be my dad. Like, to me, it just feels so much more believable, but that character would be okay with doing these things, whereas, again, in something, I mean, I guess you could argue in Harry Potter, it is built up because there's 7 books, but I mean more so, like, in the last few installments of Harry Potter, it just seems very much like Harry's like, well, I gotta defeat Voldemort now, and it just seems very, like, I don't know, like he didn't have enough time to build up to it, at least for me, and I love Harry Potter, don't get me wrong, like that's one of my favorite series as a kid, but all that being said, I just find Luke as a main character in the hero's journey so much more relatable, which is great. All that being said, now we get Luke in the sequels, and I'm going to skip over the Mandalorian for now. I'll talk about that right at the end. But we get Luke in the sequels, and Luke's portrayal in The Last Jedi, because I mean he's barely in The Force Awakens, so it barely even counts, but Luke's portrayal in The Last Jedi is a huge point of contention for Star Wars fans all over the place. And of all the sequel criticisms, and there's a lot, some are valid, a lot are not, this is one I totally get. Like, it's totally valid. I mean, you have your golden boy, your hero of everything, and then all of a sudden he's a cranky old man who's in exile, basically. So I get why people were upset with that, because, you take this perfect, good character who saved the world, and then you make him have flaws. And I understand how that's jarring, especially because people were so excited to be seeing Luke again, and then all of a sudden it's like he wants nothing to do with the Jedi, which, based on our previous experience with him, in Return of the Jedi, is not at all in character. I loved his portrayal, though. I didn't at first, obviously. Most people didn't. But I appreciate, as I've said before, like, I like when they make characters more realistic, and I know a lot of people like to just see the idealistic version of characters and people, and that's totally fine, but for me, I love seeing, realisticness. And to me, it's so realistic that, after coming off this huge high and, having the Jedi Temple and all of that, and then all of that falling apart, that Luke would be crushed. I really liked it because for me, it humanized Luke. It made him more real. And to me, I liked seeing my hero have flaws because that makes it seem like it's okay for me to have flaws. And then to see him, kind of come full circle and die, basically trying to bring Ben back to the light, and get that redemption and do what he's always been doing, which is bringing people from the dark side back to the light. I loved it. It humanized Luke for me, and it really what solidified him as one of my favorite characters. I mean, now I appreciate who he is in the original trilogy, now that I like that he was humanized in The Last Jedi, but before that, I didn't really care, again, and maybe that's another reason why I think Luke is better in A Hero's Journey, because I appreciate him more because he has flaws later on, but yeah, all that to say, I totally get why people are upset, because you know what? Sometimes some people, and sometimes you don't want to see your favorite character have flaws, but for me, I really, really appreciated it, and honestly, I find it encouraging, that even the greatest hero of the galaxy had flaws, made mistakes, but was able to pick himself back up out of that and ultimately play a part in saving the galaxy once again. What really solidified Luke, though, as one of my favorite characters was his scene in The Mandalorian. Because I didn't realize how much I liked this character until I was bawling my eyes out at 1:30 in the morning watching The Mandalorian when he showed up. That moment has got to be one of the best premiere moments, it is the best premiere moment I've ever experienced in my entire life. Like, it sent me to another dimension, honestly. Like, if I could relive that moment, I would 100%. I remember sitting there and I was watching the premiere and my whole family was asleep because it comes out at 1 a.m. my time. And I was staying up and I was watching it. And, we kind of knew a Jedi was going to show up. I didn't really know who it would be. Didn't expect it to be Luke because after, the backlash from the sequels, I didn't think they'd touch Luke's character again. So I did not think it was going to be Luke at all. And then I just remember seeing that lone X-Wing flying up and thinking, they didn't. And then seeing the green saber and being like, they didn't. And then seeing his belt and being like, oh my goodness, they did. And I had to, because like I said, everyone in my house was sleeping. I clapped a hand over my mouth so fast because I was screaming and I couldn't control. I was just sobbing. It was such a great moment. I was so excited. And it was in that moment, or reflecting on it afterwards the next morning, that I realized, like, I really like this character. Like, I really like this character. And I loved seeing, given how much I do like Luke upon further reflection in his other parts of his story, I really liked seeing him, at his full Jedi potential, because that's not really something we've ever seen. Even like Return of the Jedi, aside from the fact that lightsaber choreography back in the 80s wasn't, where it could have been, I don't think even if it was meant to be as intense as that scene in The Mandalorian, because really that scene in Return of the Jedi where Luke is fighting on the Death Star, it's more about Vader than Luke, really. And so it was so cool to see Luke, center of attention, just crazy. Like, I have such a big smile on my face right now just talking about this. It just, yeah. I didn't even mind his CGI face because I was so excited. And I really think at the moment I realized, I was like, yeah, I really like this character. Like, I relate to him. I think he's very well developed he's never gotten stale, in my opinion, across the movies. He's relatable in every movie in a different way. And so good. Like I said, the way he's just taking things one step at a time in A New Hope, and then in questioning and sort of maybe even some imposter syndrome in Empire and a bit of Return of the Jedi, and then ultimately just that confidence, like, yes, I am going to save the world now in Return of the Jedi, to then see him fall and make mistakes, but to pick himself back up. It's such an incredible arc, and I love it. I love it so much, and I love him so much, and it's really just that scene in The Mandalorian just summed it all up, and it's just... yeah, if I could go back and relive that, I would pay money to do that, because I don't know if I'm ever going to feel that much serotonin in my brain again. I'm sure I will. But, oh my goodness, so incredible. Yeah, but I guess that's the end of really Luke's appearances. I haven't read any of his like Legends novels, but I think I will now that I've had this discovery that I just enjoy the character so much. But anyway, I do think I've taken up enough time rambling on sort of coherently, but mostly incoherently about how much I love Luke Skywalker, shamelessly. It's cool to like the main character when the main character is so cool. And but anyway, if you're still here listening to me, thank you so much for listening. Oh, if you heard that was my glasses falling off my head. Thank you so much for listening. As always, I hope everyone who is listening has a great day, night, morning, evening, whatever it is, wherever you are. And as always, please feel free to reach out to me on social media. I love hearing from people. It makes me so happy. So yeah, please feel free to do that. And as always, may the Force be with you.